It is a great pleasure to be here today with all of you, with so many colleagues and friends. And yeah, after this great talk, we'll continue with Corinna Lhoir. She's a PhD student at the University of Hamburg, and her paper today is called Silent Sounds and Subtle Spheres, The Secrets of Anāhata Nāda in the Jain Yoga of the Yogapradīpa. So, Corinna, the floor is yours.
I was in Nepal last month and I bought this wonderful singing bowl. Unfortunately, you will not be able to hear it when I hit it, so I will just ask you to use your imagination. What is so special about this bowl is once you hit it, it will have a wonderful, long, slowly fading sound. And it takes really actually almost a minute for the sound to finally dissolve in silence. And this is a wonderful example for, or maybe also a picture that we can use for dhyana, for meditation. Sound has always been a very powerful doorway into silence, into presence, and into awareness. The Yogapradīpa, the text that I'm working on, is a medieval Jain yoga text. It describes a form of meditation on an inner spontaneous sound, the so-called Anāhata Nāda, which we have heard of before in Paveen's presentation. So this unstruck sound has origins and parallels in very early tantric texts and hatha yoga traditions. But most importantly, in the Yogapradīpa, we find a very innovative reinterpretation of this idea within the Jain philosophy. So one central question of my presentation is, what does Anāhata Nāda mean in the Jain context, in the Jain Yogapradīpa, and how does this text uniquely understand the relationship between sound, meditation, and the experience of the soul? The triad of Nāda, Bindu, and Kala appears frequently in early tantric texts such as the Sharada-tilaka, the Tantraloka, the Vijñābhairava Tantra. Here those terms refer to cosmic and metaphysical principles. You have Nāda as a subtle vibration, you have Bindu as a point of origin or essence, and Kala as a creative power. In later Hatha Yoga, however, these concepts take on a practical, more bodily meaning, at least in the beginning, and Nāda becomes the inner spontaneous sound, Anāhata Nāda, which is experienced during deep meditation. Bindu becomes associated with subtle bodily essence, often identified with Amrita or semen, and techniques are developed to retain this essence. So Melanson, in his works from 2007 and 2024, highlights these shifts and shows how this triad moves from a more metaphysical idea to practical yoga techniques. And understanding these contexts allows us also to see how the Jain Yogapradīpa both inherits and reinterprets these concepts. Let's take a look at the past. Nāda in the Vijñābhairava Tantra. And I will translate a verse for you here that has been worked on by Bettina Bäumer. Meditating in the dvādaśānta, siddhacakra, and in the heart on the luminous point, Bindu, shaped like a subtle spark of fire, arising from the inner vibration within the space between the eyebrows, one becomes absorbed. And the word used here is laya. When one immerses oneself into the Shabda Brahman, the Brahman that is sound, which resounds in the Anāhata, the unstruck sound, without break, like a swiftly flowing stream within the inner ear, patra karna, one attains the supreme Brahman, the Param Brahman. So here, the Anāhata Nāda is the inner, spontaneous, uncaused sound. Every physical sound is produced by contact, by friction or striking, but the Anāhata is not caused by any of these actions. It arises within, either spontaneously or by closing the ears with cupped hands. And this sound is considered the audible form of the absolute Brahman. The Maitri Upanishad already states Brahman has two forms. The form as sound, the Shabda Brahman, and the form as silence. Immersed in the Shabda Brahman, one attains the supreme. So the second half of verse 38 of the Vijnabhairava Tantra is taken almost verbatim from this Upanishadic teaching. And here again we see the ancient Vedanta perspective articulating the same principle. Brahman has two forms, sound and that which transcends the sound. So crucially, it's through sound that the meditator reaches the formless Brahman. Couple of words about the Yogapradīpa for those who have not seen me present on this text before, which should not be too many people. The Yogapradīpa, the Lamp of Yoga, is a medieval Jain text on meditation, and it is preserved in multiple manuscripts with Sanskrit verses and with vernacular commentaries, primarily in Old Gujarati. It is likely composed between the 14th and the 15th centuries, and it integrates Jain ethical and doctrinal perspectives with broader yogic practices that are shared across religious tradition. Its commentary traditions, such as the Tabu and Balavaboda commentaries, they often adapt pan-Indic yogic terminology to a distinctly Jain worldview. In the section that we are looking at today, the focus is on Nāda, the unstruck sound as an advanced object of meditation. And the verses we will see place Nāda within the subtle body cosmology of the dvādaśānta, but also in the highest sphere of liberation. So let's look at three central verses with verse 115, which will, as we will see, describes Anāhata Nāda as the subtlest manifestation of supreme bliss, experienced spontaneously as the yogin meditates. Then we have verse 127 that calls this practice pure meditation, Shuddha Dhyana, which indicates that the experience is spontaneous, not artificially produced, and is achieved through continuous practice. Finally, verse 131 is striking. It explicitly refers to Nāda, Bindu, and Kala, the very triad known from Tantric and Hatha-yogic texts, but states that the meditator transcends them. Atita, as we will see. The highest focus of meditation is, of course, the dvādaśānta, the point above the head, leading directly to the supreme state of the soul, the paramānanda, described as eternal bliss, Sat Ananda. The verses in detail. So first verse number 115 presents Nāda as the subtle object and the seat of supreme bliss, paramānanda. One should meditate on the unstruck sound, Nāda, situated below the dvādaśānta, as the abode of supreme bliss, the subtle object beyond one's own perception. Verse 127 instructs the yogin to fix the mind in pure, formless meditation, Shuddha Dhyana, at the dvādaśānta. In the pure meditation on the unstruck sound, through constant practice, very important, constant practice, one should place the mind in yoga at the formless dvādaśānta. Finally, verse 131 explicitly transcends the triad of Nāda, Bindu, and Kala, situating the dvādaśānta as the unique abode of eternal bliss. One should always meditate on the dvādaśānta, which has transcended Nāda, Bindu, and Kala, is endowed with the power of the highest self, and is the unique abode of eternal bliss. So taken together, these verses show a movement from perceiving Nāda as an object to using it as a vehicle of meditation and ultimately transcending it in the realization of the Supreme Self. And if we compare these ideas with, for example, the Hatha Pradipika, we will find out that these ideas are, of course, not unique to the Jain tradition. The same imagery and practice instructions appear in key texts of Hatha Yoga, such as the Hatha Pradipika. There, Nāda meditation is described as a method to withdraw the senses, still the mind, and attain samadhi. So have a look at verse 434. The yogi who desires yogic sovereignty should abandon all thought and concentrate with an attentive mind on nothing but the internal sound. Within the unstruck sound, Anāhata Shabda, there's the resonance, dvani, within the resonance. There's the object of knowledge, jnana. Within the object of knowledge is the mind, manas. When the mind dissolves there, that is Vishnu's supreme state. So in this verse from the Hatha Pradipika, we encounter a strikingly layered description of inner absorption. The yogin is guided inward through successive levels of subtle perception. First comes the Anāhata Shabda, the unstruck sound, the spontaneous inner resonance not produced by any external contact. Within the sound is a more subtle dvani, a vibration that itself contains the jnana, the object of knowledge. This in turn holds the mind itself. So the image is one of nested spheres or concentric enclosures, sound within sound, meaning within vibration, mind within meaning. As the mind dissolves into this innermost core, the yogin reaches the supreme state of Vishnu, an expression here for, of course, ultimate realization. The metaphor not only maps an experiential journey through progressive subtler perceptions, but it also mirrors the textural layering we find across the yoga traditions. Sound as both a sensory gateway and a metaphysical bridge to the absolute. So here's another verse from the Hatha Pradipika, 450. As long as sound exists, there is a concept of space. That which is soundless is the Supreme Brahman and is called the Supreme Self. So we see in both traditions, the one of the Hatha Pradipika and the Yoga Pradipa, Nāda is located within a subtle body map and associated with the supreme states. Brahman in Hatha Yoga, Paramatman in the Yoga Pradipa. Both move from Nāda as an object of concentration towards its transcendence. The Jain text reframes these goals in terms of liberation of the soul and ethical purity, while the Hatha Yoga text draws on Śaiva and Vedantic metaphysics. So despite the doctrinal differences, we see that the meditative phenomenology described is strikingly similar, right? In the Yoga Pradipa, however, meditating on Nāda is never a standalone technique. It is embedded in a distinctly Jain path of ascetic discipline and moral purification. So we have heard of the most important facets and facts in Jain Yoga in the wonderful presentation by Parveen, where he also highlighted the importance, for example, of ahimsa and elimination of karma. Exactly the same facts we find in the Yogapradīpa. The text surrounds Nāda instructions with verses on ahimsa, on celibacy, and especially on detachment from possessions and the restraint of the senses. Just a quick example without giving the verses, but we have verse 121 which warns that subtle passions, the kashayas, remain until the mind is fully merged in the unstruck sound. And we have verse number 123 that says that meditation on Nāda burns away karmas, and I quote, like the sun disperses darkness. So unlike the Hatha Pradipika, where Nāda is a yogic tool leading to Brahman, here's it one stage in a much larger process aimed at the destruction of karma and, of course, the liberation of the soul. A little bit adding to this, Alan Guff has shown that Jain yantras, particularly the siddhacakra, contain visual elements symbolizing subtle states of consciousness. So the Yogapradīpa's use of terms like Nāda, Bindu, and Kala suggests that these tantric elements were known and deliberately reinterpreted. In Jain symbolism, the inner sound becomes not just a subtle phenomenon, but a signifier of the soul itself. So the siddhacakra and other yantras thus serve as both visual and conceptual frameworks for this meditation, showing how the Jain authors integrated broader yogic knowledge into a distinctly Jain spiritual path. So let me quickly summarize what I've been going through with you today. The Jain Yogapradīpa is deeply connected to the broader yoga traditions of its time, and it's drawing on concepts that have been familiar with other traditions for centuries. And like Nāda, the Bindu Kala, dvādaśānta, for example. Yet it is also strikingly innovative because it reinterprets the Anāhata Nāda as the spontaneous realization of the soul, called Atman in the Yogapradīpa, but meant, of course, is Jiva, the soul with qualities, as it is so well known in the Jain soteriological universe. And explicitly, the text explicitly positions the triad of Nāda, Bindu, Kala as stages to be transcended, which is basically representing a distinctive Jain approach to yoga that combines the shared technical knowledge with a uniquely Jain soteriological orientation. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and I look forward to your questions.